I don't look at the grades, but the more we raise the road at that location, the harder it is to get down to grade the existing parking lot. So I'm not sure. I know it goes up a hill there, but I'm not. Boy, I don't know what the contours.
Well, it couldn't go up the hill if this is a hill slope. I mean, it would have to be, this is higher than that. Correct.
There's a hillside, and I don't recall exactly, but for instance, if you stand here, it's like 10 or 15 feet higher up here. So there's a hillside here, and I don't recall offhand how steep that is. It's possible, sure, but I don't know what the impacts would be to do that.
Because I know that Mr. Garcia had his eyes on those buildings at one previous point in time. So let's just...
So get him a road to it.
Well, I just hate to not look at these things and anticipate logical connectivity. So
if you're talking about a parking lot entrance, certainly this is very doable because you can be steeper in a parking lot than we could maybe up here.
Well, I've heard references to a water line. I don't want to paint ourselves into a corner where, if we got the water line there and it's 2 feet below the surface and you have to make it have a 3-foot cut in the future to have access to our property that we own there, let's just don't paint ourselves into a corner. So keep that in mind, please. I can support this with a potential for provision for access.
Okay, my turn. I cannot support option 1 at all. It's Blagan Dunbar all over again. Also, the Evetts Pass area only has an east-west exit, also, Supervisor, but you can take Avery Sheep Ranch if you need to come over. It goes both ways, thank you.
Yes.
So I just thought I would tell you that's not the only way out of District 2. I think it's short stacking. We have in Arnold short stacking, and it is not working. And it's because everybody's lived with it for so long, we sort of know it's there. But I will tell you, whenever any issues come up about now wanting to make modifications, and since I've been a supervisor, we've talked about it in Arnold, and it is very difficult once you have it to then make change, because everybody then becomes a road engineer, or then you get a business, or something comes up, and nobody wants to make a change. And I think on the short term, this might be fine. On the long term, where we have to really look long term, option 1 is not acceptable to me. Okay, it's short stacking, it's short term. We talk about a roundabout, but then we have the emergency ambulance entrance into the hospital, which could be then impacted by that. I would like to see staff talk to the hospital about option 4 on what are their mitigations, because I think long term, and that's what we have to look at, is that's in the best interest of the whole Mountain Ranch hospital government center complex, because at some point it's going to be a light, and you do option 1, that isn't going to be a possibility. And then we go back to, well, maybe we'll do one at that lower, where it says keep existing entrance. The majority of traffic is going to be going to the courts and the jail. I have an option 1 in Evetts Pass, and it's a disaster. And this will be also on the long term. So I guess I would like to see option 4 proceed before we make a final decision. So there you go. I have 2 people that want option 1. I'm not sure about the other 2, and I'm a no. So if option 1 is the preference choice for the board, then there's no need to discuss option 4. Is that what I heard Steve and Gary say.
Actually, I hope what you heard us both say is that option 1 was our preferred option, and that we would like further discussions on 4, with maybe bringing back a final recommendation from you after those discussions and costing out the 2 possibilities.
I like that one a little bit better than what I thought I heard you say.
Well,
Okay, so, Gary, is that
Was Tom
okay?
would chime
Tom?
Yeah, I guess the only, I would just follow on to Steve's comment that if you do option 1, then the long-term solution is to bring it over to, what's the name of that road? Poe. And I would hope that within, if that turns out to be where the road is constructed, that I would hope that would get both in the circulation element of the general plan, and it would get in the government center master plan that I think is currently being updated, and I think they need to be in there so somebody doesn't put something there that precludes the option in the future. So I think it needs to be in both those documents, because if that happened as a long-term solution, that would maintain the maximum integrity and capacity for Mountain Ranch Road. Is that correct? Okay, so I think that needs to be reserved. With that having said, then I would support the option 1 recommendation.
Yes?
Okay, so really, it's sort of more direction than a vote, because...
Based on the board's direction, we can go meet with the hospital one additional time to see if we can come to some resolution on option 4, see if there's any mitigations we can do to their site that would address their concerns. If that isn't possible, then we can, I guess,
Well, Tom, my question would be, suppose you go talk to the hospital and they say, yes, well, we're fine with option 4. Would that change your recommendation?
I would prefer option 4, yes.
Okay, then go talk to them.
Okay, is that acceptable?
Go ahead, Steve.
I just want to make the motion, then we are taking action today, or is this
Well, I
simply a
think it's just
recommendation?
giving them, because they're going to come back, if going based on what you just said.
All right, well, my motion would be that we move forward with option 1 as our preferred option, but that you develop, at least finish the discussions with the hospital, which takes one of the 9 issues that I had away, and that you bring it back with a recommendation to the board in 2 weeks.
Along with cost estimates between
And
the
cost
two.
estimates attached.
Is that possible, or...
Based on the budget for the project, I prefer to bring back cost estimates on the preferred alternative. So if we are unsuccessful with the hospital, then I prefer to bring back a cost estimate for option 1.
If you're not successful, but I...
The motion, I just want to say it again, the preferred alternative is option 1.
Okay.
Yeah, but that we are still keeping the other on the table for a little further discussion development. If there's something major that overturns the general sentiments of 4 of the 5, you'd be welcome to bring that back for our consideration.
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
4 to 1, Madeline, I'm opposed.
Even
I'm not
before I could have
opposed,
just
no,
smoked
I'm
you.
not, I am strongly opposed to option 1 as a preferred alternative, and that's the reason for my no vote on that. Okay, the board is going to go into recess, take a recess. No, I think we need to go because it ends at 12.
Yeah.
That we go over to Squatty's, Terrence Jordan's retirement, and then
And we
we'll be
invite everybody
back.
else to join us there. He's a guy worth honoring.
We'll be back at 1:30.
Wait a minute, Tom's got to stay here, he's already been
Yeah,
there.
he's had his
Been there, done that. I've done all about it.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, welcome to the afternoon session. It's item 19, it's discussion on possible action. Nope, that's not right.
Whoops.
Yeah, I'm still on the morning session. A minute order approving the revisions to the joint powers agreement establishing the Calaveras Council of Government and approving the organization and procedure manual. This is brought to us by Public Works. I'm assuming, Mr. Garcia, you're taking the lead on this?
Yes, Madam Chair. As soon as we get our, oh, there it is.
And you want the lights dimmed?
I think we don't have striping to see on this one, so here we go. Everybody should be fine as soon as we get there. It is. And there we go. We're here today on the continuation of an item that was heard originally on July 20th. Study session held with the Board of Supervisors and City Council, members of the City Council, on the update to the joint powers of the agreement that established the Calvert's Council of Governments. Yes, sir. The purpose of the JPA is to govern. It governs the rules, powers, and duties of the COG. It serves as an operational guide for the COG's responsibilities and activities, and it identifies the roles and responsibilities of the COG, the county, and the city. The JPA update is needed for a couple of reasons. It was last amended in 1999. There's currently an unclear delineation of roles and responsibilities between the various agencies. There are unclear policies regarding project selection, funding, approval, and prioritization. And there was also a proposal by the COG to pursue status as a permanent independent agency. Now that has not yet come before the board or the city council. County staff had recommended when it did come up before the COG board that these items in the JPA be addressed prior to establishment, or prior to taking a position on the establishment of the COG as a permanent agency. The JPA update process, again, July 20th, a study session was held between the Board of Supervisors and City Council. August 23rd, the proposed JPA organization, joint powers agreement, and an organization procedures manual were submitted to the city, the COG, and the Board of Supervisors for review. On August 25th, the county and the city staff met to discuss the proposed changes. On September 7th, the City Council held a study session to discuss the proposed changes, at which time the city provided some comments. September 16th, the final draft was circulated to the Board of Supervisors and COG. And today, September 21st, the revised JPA is presented to the Board of Supervisors for adoption, and the city has this agendized on tonight's meeting as well. Summary of the significant changes. Board composition. Currently, there are 2 county representatives, 2 city representatives, and 3 public members. The updated JPA will continue the 2 county representatives, 2 city representatives, and 1 public member. Additional language was also added to define voting, to define alternates, to electing officers, and the term of the various elected officials, clearly identifying the term of elected officials and the public member, and also how to address vacancies. Personnel. It added language identifying the COG director position as at will, consistent with other department heads. It also addresses committees and advisory groups. It added an interagency transit committee and added an executive management group. It was formerly known as the administrative committee. COG powers and functions. The JPA agreement further defines the functions and the powers of the COG. It also provides a standard practice it follows the standard practice for COGs throughout California, and it minimizes the duplication of the efforts between the public, or between the city and the county and the COG, hopefully clearing up any confusion in the public as to which agency is responsible for which portion of a project. Under tasks and responsibilities, the section was added to further define the COG's responsibilities for state and federal law. In addition, we received comments from the county's planning department and added the following language. Community plans, specific plans, and master plans exist within the framework of the legally established city or county general plan. As such, all future projects related to the development, maintenance, modification, and/or amendment of said plans shall be solely at the discretion of the City Council or the County Board of Supervisors as applicable. It also addresses some cleanup language to the public transit. It identifies the county as the public transit operator. Currently, the current JPA agreement identifies the COG as the transit operator, but that hasn't been the case since 2004. Thank you. Annual budget. The current JPA only addresses the Transportation Development Act funds. The revised JPA addresses the entire COG budget and ensures transparency, and it's also consistent with most regional transportation planning agencies throughout the state. Termination and dissolution. The language was removed regarding the automatic transition of the executive director of the COG into the executive director of the LTC, should the COG be dissolved. Organization and Procedures Manual. This was a huge undertaking which identified the current practices of the COG as well as practices that we believe should be implemented. It acts as the orientation and implementation manual for the city, the county, and the COG, so it applies to all of us. It is intended to expand upon items contained within the JPA, and the benefit of this is that it can be modified to allow for changes in day-to-day operations and practice to reflect new state and federal regulations without having to open up the JPA, the document that forms the COG. So this Operation Procedures Manual is a living document meant to be addressed, modified as needed. Committees and advisory groups. The Technical Advisory Committee is amended to require open meetings in adherence to the Brown Act. Included in that is, if the COG so desires, there is an ability to televise the meetings. It's not required, but if the media wants to come in and record the meetings via audio or televised, they're not prohibited from doing it. Executive Management Group, the composition is amended to include the County Administrative Officer and the City Administrator. The overall work program. Language has been added to reimburse the city and county staff time for COG-sponsored projects. Currently, that's not the case. Those costs fall to the various departments that are being requested for assistance. It also amended to require the city or county endorsements for projects submitted by non-member agencies for funding. If there is a desire by a group to propose a project for OWP funding, that group would get the city or the county to sponsor them for inclusion into that list of projects to be considered for funding. Language was added that requires the COG, the city, and the county to post the OWP projects and the status of those projects on our various websites. The desired outcome of the updated JPA, there are several. One is to strengthen and unify the Calaveras County region by allowing the COG to focus on regional planning, funding, compliance with member agencies' responsibilities for community planning and project delivery. We are acting together to achieve the same goals. And this will strengthen our ability to obtain funding and deliver projects. It's a critical item that seems to be not as well pursued as it could be by all of the agencies. It's working together as a team to both deliver projects and secure funding. The other desired outcome is to restore the public's confidence in local government by opening up the meetings, various TAC meetings, to both to the public and the ability for people to monitor what's going on. It ensures transparency in the decision-making process. It increases the opportunity for public involvement by opening up these meetings. It also ensures consistency between the actions taken by the COG, the city, and the county. And it increases the accountability for all the agencies, the city, the county, and the COG. At this time, Public Works staff encourages the board to approve the updated Joint Powers Agreement and the Organization and Procedures Manual as presented today.
Thank you. Procedure I'm going to follow is I'm going to ask the board if they have any questions or comments to make. I will open it up to the public for any questions or comments. All questions will be so noted and answered at the end of public comment period. I will then bring it back to the board for any decision or direction to the Public Works staff.
Marita, before you do that, you might just ask if there are any other staff comments.
Oh, are there any other staff comments? Oh, so that sounds like pre-planned. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can only second the Public Works Director's desire to clarify, I think hopefully, and improve the relationship between the COG and the county, and hopefully with the city staff as well. I was part of the revision process. I focused mainly on the sections 13, 14, and 15, which deal with the interrelationship between the COG and the county staff, particularly planning and public works. However, I did review the entire document, the final document. I think the revisions are appropriate. I think they do clarify the respective roles and responsibilities of the different agencies, and I would support the approval of those revisions as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. White. Pardon, he's George White, a planning director. I'm sorry. He should have introduced himself, and I should have asked him to. My
George
fault.
White, Planning Director, Calaveras County.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Marita, if I may, I know that there appears to be some confusion with some of the public as to the board's direction with why we're bringing this back to the board today. And back in July, the board directed staff to work with the city and the city council to look at ways to more clearly revise the JPA document to delineate roles and responsibilities to stop some of the confusion that appeared to be happening with relationships among different parties and entities. And we were able to work with the city, and the city administrator, Dave Richards, is here today, as well as the city planning director. Appreciate your comments. We sat down and met with them, took their comments. The city council joined us on occasion here when we met in July, gave us some direction. Some of that direction is included in this draft document. The manual that's attached, there's some concerns that might be too wordy. The reason that is attached is to really, Jamie Azaran, Public Works staff, collected, I think, about 40 different joint powers authority documents from different COGs throughout the state, and took the best elements of all of those and tried to craft a document that would fit Calaveras County. So it's not as if the language came out of thin air. It's actually language that has been used in other counties and has been found to be helpful so that there's not a blurring of responsibilities and confusion as to roles and responsibilities. I just want to make that point because I'm not... I've gotten some comments that people are concerned that somehow the board is not looking at keeping the COG in place, when in fact the board was very clear in July that your direction to staff was to revise the JPA in concert with the city so that the COG could in fact go out and find the funds for the projects, but do the transportation planning on a collaborative and partnership basis.
Thank you. Are there any other staff members that I forgot that Tom Tryon might like to have addressed to? I'd like to then ask the board, do you have any comments or questions you'd like to make at this time?
Not at this time, for me.
Gary? Tom?
No, not this time.
Steve?
I'll hold off.
I won't. So, she's good. I'm going to give my comments now. Maybe they'll answer some of yours, maybe they won't. But I need to be real clear up front. First of all, in the letter to the board dated the September 21, which had the 914 changes to the JPA, then on 915 or 16, I got another changes to the JPA in the Organization and Procedure Manual. So I have at least 3 of them in front of me. In the discussion and summary, it said COG staff requested their board, meaning the COG board, authorize a request for legislation that would establish the COG as a permanent agency. This was not done by the COG staff, it was done by those people who were at the strategic plan. Then the COG director gave to the council, the COG council, options. And the options were, as Mr. Garcia said, to pursue legislation, status quo, revising the JPA, or some mix thereof. The COG staff, the COG board gave direction to the COG director to work through the TAC. So I just needed to address that. I want to go to the draft JPA. And Jamie, if you don't mind, I want to give these to you. Please give to Mr. Garcia so he can follow me. On the JPA agreement, the last whereas the org and procedures manual, I do not believe this should be part of the JPA agreement. It's an operational document, and it should receive input from the city and county in a TAC meeting. I do not believe it should be part of it. The JPA already says it can be modified without changing the JPA. It's a working document. It's a day-to-day operational document. It should not be part of the JPA. The membership. I happen to like the 2, 2, and 3. 2 city, 2 county, and 3 public members. I think it served us well. I've learned a lot from the diversity of the public members we have. I feel they brought a non-political perspective to the proceedings of the COG. If the city and county decide that 3 public members are too much of a challenge or create too much of a conflict, then why not have 2, 2, and alternate the 5th member being a member from the city, and then 2 years later, a member from the county. That's just another permutation to the 2, 2, and 1 public member. Then it's all elected at all times. On section 4.23, impartially chosen, without partiality for either such entity or special interest thereof. That's how we're going to choose the public member. I think it's unrealistic, so since it's the electeds who are deciding, it's no different than Congress approving a Supreme Court justice. Are we asking them to walk on water, that they're totally impartial, and have no special interest? That's, I think, somewhat unrealistic. I don't even know why it's in the document. On section 4.4, the first sentence is confusing. I think we should delete for each board member. Unless the Board of Supervisors and the City Council wish to have more than 1 alternate, I think it's up to the member to ask the alternate if they can attend, not to give the director a 24-hour notice. That's happened sometimes. I know with Tom and I, who represent the board, at the last minute something comes up, and we ask the alternate to serve on to attend the meeting. On 4.5, at the beginning of each calendar year, the council shall appoint a chair and a vice chair. We have it on a rotation basis now. I like the fact that it's on a rotation. I'm seeing some of these. On section 5.1, term of office for each member, I believe should be determined by the governing body, not in the JPA agreement. Section 5.2, the term for a citizen member, if we have one, or if we have 3, I think it should be for a minimum of 2 years. It's very difficult to learn the transportation industry all in 1 year. So I think a minimum of a 2-year serving on the COG is appropriate. And of course, if we have a public member, they can be removed by cause by a majority vote of the council, who are the electeds. Section 8.1 and throughout the document, I believe the organization and procedure manual needs to be removed because I do not believe it should be part of the JPA. It's a separate, I believe it needs to be a separate document, not attached. Section 11.1, like contracts that we have the departments approved, or today we just had the CAO approve something. I think we need to have some delegation. Yes?
Is there any chance that you could turn the lights on so you're not keeping us in the dark back there?
It's a purpose. We did it on purpose. Got it. Okay. I can see you. I think we need to have some delegation to the executive director. For example, a custodial contract or maybe some of the legal issues. Since I do not support having an executive committee, Supervisor Tryon in the past was very forceful about not having an administrative committee at the COG. This executive committee is the same thing with just different players. And at one time, this Board of Supervisors had an administrative committee, and he was also opposed to that. I agree with him on that, and I do not think we need an executive committee. If we cannot serve as the COG board, then we should change the makeup of how the COG board works. We do not need an executive committee made up of the CAO, the city manager, and whoever else we think needs to make recommendations to the COG board. Also, there was somewhere in the document it talks about the powers and responsibilities, and I don't even like that word. Section 12.13, I do not know why working committees, like with the county, all have to operate in compliance with the Brown Act. If a committee is appointed by the COG board, the same as if a committee is appointed by the Board of Supervisors, e.g. Fish and Game Commission, it has to abide by the Brown Act. The TAC, as an example, does not need to abide by the Brown Act. It's not that we're hiding anything, but you have a working committee, and if you have to post agendas and then you have to put it out, it's costing you money. Why are we doing that? I mean, the results of all working committees come to the COG board, or they come to the Board of Supervisors or the City Council. So it's cost, time, etc. And I'm not clear what the objective is. The objective is to let people know what's happened, then we can report out at a Board of Supervisors or a City Council member meeting, or you can report out at the COG, or there could be, the result is some kind of proposal recommendation. And I don't think that all the working committees need to be under the Brown Act. If the Board of Supervisors, under 12.2, does not have an executive management group, why do we need one now? It's sort of just one more responsibility for the CAO and the city manager to do. Again, it gets back to what is the purpose of the COG board. It'd be like having an administrative or management group for the Board of Supervisors or for the City Council. If an ad hoc committee is needed for an issue, then the council can establish one. Section 13.3, 1 and 2, I believe it's contradictory language. I mean, doesn't planning attend the TAC meetings? And where is this in relation to Section 13.22? I think it's redundant. If we talk about true collaboration, there is no flexibility in this. The counties asked the COG to do the RIM program. It added, and we need to add language for that. It does not serve the county or the city on potential needs. Again, it's like the Rim or Cosgrove Creek, in which we spent a lot of time, and it was given to the COG to manage. Section 14.131, I believe we need to work through the TAC and delete again the organization and procedure manual. 14.18, if the city or county wants to be reimbursed for any work they do for the COG, then it's fair play. If the city or county wants the COG to do some work for them, then the COG should also be reimbursed from the city or county. 15.2, I'm not sure why it's there. I feel it's redundant. I feel like this JPA agreement is a reactionary document. And we go on and on about the same things over and over again in this document. Section 19 needs a total rework. I don't think it was thought out. I think there could be unintended consequences. For example, in 19.1, if the JPA is always amendable, why is it enforced for 5 years? It's just enforced. Whatever the date is, and we want to amend it, if we want to amend it in a year, 5 years, doesn't matter. So I don't think there should be a 5-year limit on that. I felt it's unnecessary. In section 19.2, I recommend that if the city and/or county wish to dissolve the COG, that there be a resolution of intent. I put in 6 months from the date of adoption of that resolution. It then gives the city and county will come together with a working group, an ad hoc group, to discuss the proposed changes that the entity who wishes to leave the COG, which is to break it up, try and figure out what those issues are and can they be mitigated. If they can come to an agreement, fine. The JPA is revised. I don't think that we have thought through in a 30-day period what this would do. We have monies that need to be taken care of. We have services that are done. We have the staff. Timelines need to be fair and realistic. And 30 days doesn't do it for something as significant as withdrawing from the JPA. I think it's the Area 12 Agency on Aging JPA I'm on, that JPA says if a member agency wishes to withdraw from the JPA, they can initiate the process and it takes effect at the end of the calendar year or the start of the next calendar year. So it's not leaving the JPA, the other member agencies, in the lurch. And I believe the resolution of intent, and these are just my words, shall indicate the date and cause of the termination. In the event that the JPA reverts to an LTC, Local Transportation Commission, I recommend the executive director be appointed for a term of 3 months to help with the transition. Then you either terminate the executive director or renegotiate the terms of the contract. I also believe the balance of the staff of the JPA, of the COG, should revert to the Local Transportation Commission. We have left 4 people who are members of the COG staff in the lurch on this, and I don't think that's fair to them. So section 19.3, it says 30 days, I'd go 6 months, but that's negotiable. Section 20, if the organization and procedure manual convenes a day-to-day operation, again, why is it in the JPA? And if it's a working document for the Council of Government, why does it have to be approved by the Board of Supervisors and the City Council? What's the COG Council for? I really feel that this JPA document's about power and winning, and it is not about the people's work or doing the projects that are before us as a whole on the county. I want to now go to the Organization and Procedures Manual. Again, I'm looking at my third copy of it, so I could have missed something in the process. I want to know who developed this. It does not appear that the COG was involved. I think if we're going to do a document that's involving another agency, that the council, that the staff of the Council of Government should have been involved in the Organization and Procedure Manual, since it is an operational guide for the agency. I'm going to give you a few of my concerns. I think it needs to be reviewed again with Council of Government input, staff input. Of course, I've made it clear I do not believe this document should be part of the JPA agreement. And let me just go to page 5. I hardly spent any time on this one. Only a few hours. I think it's negative wording under the purpose in the second paragraph. The COG is an organization through, etc., not, quote, a substitute for basic local government. It's indicative of the negative environment that surrounds what's before us today. Page 8, technical staff. In addition to the executive director, the following employees do provide professional administrative support versus may support. I mean, what are we saying to the staff of the COG who are professional and who do provide service? That they may provide it on days we think it's okay that they do? I mean, it's... on page 9 and page 10, the focus compensation study triennially, I want to know how this was determined. Again, it was to be reviewed by the executive management group. They're just another layer of bureaucracy. So we keep talking about bureaucracy, and the executive management group is just another layer. I don't know, I can stand to be corrected, but I don't believe the county does a comp and classification study every 3 years. Why are we putting it on the Council of Governments? It should be done when it's needed to be done, or if we have a position we want to do it for. We're talking 4 employees here. On page 9, number 3, second paragraph, the tech services and human resources is done in-house, not through the city or county. I think that should be eliminated. I believe, and I stand to be corrected, that I think the financial has to be done through the city or county, and those changes that are recommended are appropriate. Page 10, the executive management group has powers. They'll conduct an annual review of the executive director and make recommendations to the COG Council. Who's doing the review? Is the executive committee doing the review, or is the board, the council, doing the review? We, as the Board of Supervisors, review the CAO. We don't have an administrative committee doing the review for the CAO. I don't know why we have an executive management committee group doing the review and then making recommendations to the COG Council. Are we double reviewing this position? There isn't a JPA that I serve on that has this done. The respective boards do the performance review of its director. On page 11 and other places of the document, the word should is used, where I believe the word will is more appropriate. should is, you should do this, you should do that. And I'm looking at Joyce, and she said, you're right, but I'm not. So, should is a nebulous word. It has no meaning to me. Page 13B, the budget estimate scheduled for May 1. The COG can correct me, but I thought it needed to be done earlier for a Caltrans review. This is a technical issue. I guess I can let the COG address that. These are just some examples of things that I've gone through in the Organization and Procedures Manual. I understand that Supervisor Tryon and 2 members of the City Council met to discuss all these changes. I was not included. The City Council made the recommendation that their 2 members of the COG and that the 2 members of the Board of Supervisors meet and discuss this. We would be meeting as supervisors and City Council people, not COG people. I was not part of those discussions. I didn't even know they had them till after it was done. I find that very inappropriate. And again, going back to page 5, where is the open and the cooperation that this document refers to? I don't think it exists for this document, nor do I feel it existed for the JPA. And those are my initial comments. Okay. If there's no other comments then by the board, who would like, just a moment please, Mr. Valentine. If there's no other comments by the board, then I will open it up to public comment. There is 5 minutes per person, and you just get 1 bite of the apple. Thank you. And please just identify yourself. Thank you.
1 bite of the apple?
That means you can't keep getting back up here, Andy.
Oh, thank heavens for small favors.
That means you got a bite to the core.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's no Garden of Eden here.
And it's not a good year for apples, right?
That's right. I can vouch for that.
After reading, next thing you know, should be writing a joke book. Anyway, I'm Andy Ballantyne. I'm from District 5. I had a couple of questions on the JPA.
Okay, ask the questions. They'll be answered at the end.
Okay, I had a question on the transparency part of it. I'm not in agreement with that. I think transparency should also extend out to the financial end of it, the financial report. When CCOG did their plan and when they received the $255,000 in grant money, they never accounted for any of that money. They never put out a financial report so that they could account to the public how the money was spent. And that's against the law, and they received repeated requests for that document, and the only thing they submitted was a budget. And so that's wrong. So I hope in the new JPA you're going to hold them more financially accountable for the funding that they've been receiving. The other thing was under expansion items, there was no clarification on expansion items in the Joint Powers Agreement. I would like to know, what these expansion or these items are. Expansion items, you just can't put that in there as a general term. You need some kind of an explanation for it. I have a problem with CCOG doing anything, really. CCOG's record kind of speaks for itself. The first thing they did was team up with myvalleysprings.com, and a grant was put out, and they never asked the public if they could put a grant out or did the public want a grant. They just went ahead and wrote it and threw it out there, and then they started pushing the grant on to all the communities and on to the residents. They didn't take any of the people into consideration whenever they were doing all this. And it kind of amazes me that whenever they put out their new consensus plan for presentation to the Board of Supervisors, when you read through their consensus plan, it's like reading the grant. What they did is they just took sections of the grant and they put it into the consensus plan. The consensus plan is also very repetitive. And I had a question that whenever they held their last meeting on the consensus plan, I submitted 22 questions. And from the way that COG answered my questions, they said that my questions would be more or less just included with the plan, but they were not going to be answered. I think that's wrong. When Gary's committee, whenever they did their plan and questions were submitted, they were required to answer all the questions, which they did. And there was a lot of questions submitted at that meeting, and I think that CCOG ought to be required to answer all those questions. The fact of the matter is, I think it's the law that they're supposed to answer those questions before anything is submitted to the Board of Supervisors, and I think that they ought to do that. The other thing, a question was brought up about the stakeholders advisory committee. They violated the terms of the grant because they never had a stakeholders advisory committee, and they held one meeting where the stakeholders were considered, and from that point on, there was no consideration for the stakeholders.
So, Mr. Valentine, what are you saying about, since this deals with the JPA and the Organization and Procedures Manual, are you making a recommendation that we put something in, and what is it that you're recommending?
Well, I'm recommending that under the transparency part of it, I think that they should be held financially accountable, which they haven't been up to now. They still need to put out a financial report to the public and tell them how the $255,000 in grant money was spent. They have not done that.
Okay.
And on the other thing, on the expansion items, I just want a clarification as to what do you mean by expansion items?
Okay. Thank
and
you.
Those items should be listed in the JPA.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to say something? Because if you don't, I'm closing public comment, so don't be shy.
Didn't think of it.
Didn't think that way.
Hi, my name's Ron Bassett. I live down in Valley Springs. And I haven't been paying a whole lot of attention to this until recently. But to me, at this time, when there's so much distrust in the government, and it's kind of a free-for-all for the people at the top to take advantage of us, that we're going to eliminate 2/3 of the general public that's going to be involved with this committee, that's just wrong. I mean, you want to be transparent, let's be transparent. And that's where it comes from. It sounds to me like this thing is starting to get kind of tailored into somebody's personal agenda, and a lot of self-gain is going to be had by this. And I don't like the way this is going, and I think you need to really look at this very carefully before you make a decision on this.
So, Mr. Bass, as I understand it, you're saying that you think we should keep the 3 public members on the
Absolutely.
council.
If not, maybe make it 6.
Okay, thank you.
Eliminate the elected members.
Be careful what you
Okay.
Hi, my name is Janice Bassett, and I live in Valley Springs. And the thing that troubles me, one of the things that troubles me about this JPA agreement proposal is the term. But like Marita was saying, it takes a long time to fully absorb what your responsibilities are and the whole aspects of what you're going to be dealing with. And you can't just get up to speed in a couple of months and then do your job. You have to be on board for at least a couple of years so you know how to proceed. So that's
Okay, thank you.
I'm Ginger Griffin from McCollum Hill, and I really appreciated Marita's comments, because a lot of those things are things that I feel concerned about when I read this document. And it seems like a lot of the changes are having the effect of weakening COG, or weakening the staff positions, the director, and especially, as has been mentioned, weakening public input. So one has to assume, in looking at this, that that was at least part of the intent behind this. My husband was on the county grand jury, and which is very aware of county agencies, and he feels that the staff and director are doing a really good job. So I'd like to ask that you go for further study on this, and also much greater transparency than we're seeing here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin.
Oops.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. My name is Katie Clough. I live in Rancho Calaveras. I have a little story to tell you. It won't take very long, but you'll understand why I do what I do. I've lived here for 5 years. Before that, I lived in Tracy 28 years. I did a lot of volunteer work at the animal shelter. As the influx of people came into Tracy, I was at the city council every chance I got, telling them we needed to expand the shelter. Well, I didn't get very much from them, so I figured, who can I go to for information?